can't quote it in context, they can't quote it correctly. And that's the first thing we're going to show you. In Acts chapter 8, verse 30. As Philip ran up, he heard the Ethiopian reading from Yeshayahu, which is Isaiah, the prophet. Do you understand what you're reading? He asked. How can I unless someone explains it to me? And he invited Philip to climb up and sit with him. Now, the portion of the Tanakh that he was reading was this. He was like a sheep led to be slaughtered, like a lamb silent before the shearer. He does not open his mouth. He was humiliated and denied justice. Who will tell about his descendants since his life has been taken from the earth? So I want to really focus on this because, this is what you believe Isaiah 53 says. And then we're going to actually read what it says. And, one thing I should have brought up is the Dead Sea Scrolls. Let's do that real quickly. So let's now read what it actually says, and this is from the Masoretic. Though mistreated, he was submissive. He was never submissive. I mean, he whipped and scourged the people obeying Torah. The Torah permits you to take your money to the temple and exchange it for an offering. But he whipped them. He was not submissive. And to the elders of the land in Matthew 23, 1 through 3, let's open up that passage. So we have context. Oh, this should read the full chapter. So Matthew 23, then Yeshua addressed the crowds and his Talmidim, the Torah teachers, and the Proshim. And he said, sit in the seat of Moshe. So they, as the leaders of the people, they were sitting in the seat of Moshe. And so whatever they tell you, take care to do it. So he's telling you, these men are your leaders. He's clearly laying it out. But then what does he do? He spends the whole rest of the chapter insulting these men and violating his own higher standard of never calling a man a fool. Remember what Isaiah 53 said there? He was submissive. He would not do what is laid out in Matthew 23. He did not open his mouth. Well, there you go. There's confirmation. He wouldn't do what is in Matthew 23. Like a lamb led to be slaughtered, like a sheep silent before its shearers, he did not open his mouth. After forcible arrest and sentencing, he was taken away, and none of his generation protested his being cut off from the land of the living. See, it's not about death, and I'll show you that in the prophet who truly fulfilled this. For the crimes of my people who deserve the punishment themselves. So let's look at Jeremiah 11:19. But I was like a tame lamb led to be slaughtered. I did not know what they were plotting schemes against me, and they said, let's destroy the tree with its fruit, and we'll cut him off from the land of the living, so that his name will be forgotten. Jeremiah is the prophet being talked about in Isaiah 53, but he's not the only prophet, as the servant is Israel, and we're going to go through that. So Jeremiah was the lamb led to be slaughtered and the man who was cut off from the land of the living. What does this mean? It means he will not bear fruit. He will not have children. And this is part of how you know that the New Testament idol can't be this man, because he had chosen to cut himself off. He didn't get married. All right, so now let's go to the Dead Sea Scrolls. Same verses, 53, 7, and 8. He was oppressed, yet when he was afflicted, he didn't open his mouth. As a lamb that is led to the slaughter, and as a sheep before its shearers is silent, so he did not open his mouth. He was taken away by oppression and judgment. And as for this generation who considered that he was cut off from the land of the living, it's the same language. It doesn't say what Acts 8 claims, that he was taken from the earth and stricken for the disobedience of my people. See, this is a serious problem for those of you who believe that this passage is about Yeshua, because You're going by the book of Acts, the New Testament quotation of it. His life was not taken from earth. This is an important realization. So now let's go back a bit to another prophet, Isaiah 53, verse 5 and 6. But he was wounded because of our crimes, crushed because of our sins. The disciplining that makes us whole fell on him, and by his bruises we were healed. We all, like sheep, went astray. We turned each one to his own way, yet Yahweh laid on him the guilt of us all. So now let's go to the prophet that clearly tells us he bore their guilt, their sin, their iniquity. Ezekiel chapter 4. As for you, son of man, I don't know, human being, son of man, it's the same thing. Take a clay slab, lay it down in front of you, and draw on it the city of Jerusalem. Show it under siege, build towers against it, raise earthworks against it, set up camps against it, and surround it with battering rams. Then take an iron griddle and put it in place of a wall between yourself and the city, and fix your gaze on it. The city is under siege. You see, part of being the servant is the city itself. The city was pierced for their transgressions, and you were the one besieging it. This will be a sign for the house of Israel. Next, you are to lay on your left side and have it bear the guilt of the house of Israel. Remember what he said? He laid on him the guilt of us all. And what is Ezekiel doing? He's bearing the guilt of the house of Israel. For as many days as you lay on your side, you will bear their guilt. It was laid on Ezekiel. For I am assigning you one day for each year of their guilt. Thus you are to bear the guilt of the house of Israel for 390 days. Then when you have finished that, you are to lay on your right side and bear the guilt of the house of Judah for 40 days, each day corresponding to a year. This is what I am assigning to you. You are to fix your gaze on the siege of Jerusalem, and with your arm bared, prophesy against it. I am tying you down with ropes, and you will not be able to turn from one side to another until you have completed the days of your siege. He was bruised for their transgressions. The disciplining fell on him. The guilt of them all fell on him. And Ezekiel gives us a model of what it means to bear their iniquity, that he would suffer one day for every year of their sin. So now let's read all of Isaiah 53. Who has believed our message? To whom has the arm of Yahweh been revealed? This is about the strength of Yahweh. The arm is the strength in Hebrew thought. For he grew up before him as a tender plant and as a root of dry ground. He has no good looks or majesty. And somebody showed me that, the Gospel of John contradicts even this, that people were attracted to him. When we see him, there is no beauty we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by men. It's not true. He was sought after. See John 6. The reason they rejected him is because he taught against Torah, taught them to drink his blood. And a man of suffering and acquainted with disease. He was despised as one whom men hide their face, and we didn't respect him. Surely he was borne our sickness and carried our suffering. Yet we considered him plagued, struck by God, and afflicted. And this is all about Ezekiel. But he was pierced for our transgressions, and that's the city of Jerusalem. The city was pierced by Babylon, by Nebuchadnezzar. He was crushed for our iniquities. The temple was crushed. The punishment was brought our peace on him, and by his wounds we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray. Everyone has turned to his own way, and Yahweh has laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed, yet when he was afflicted, he didn't open his mouth. And the lamb that is led to the slaughter, and the sheep that is before its shearers, is silent. But he didn't open his mouth. He was taken away by oppression and judgment. And as for his generation, who considered he was cut off out of the land of the living, and stricken for disobedience of my people. They made his grave with the wicked. He didn't have a grave with the wicked. And with the rich man at his death. See, they try to make this part true, but they ignore this part. Although he had done no violence, again, he whipped people. Nor was any deceit in his mouth. Okay, drink my blood? Hello. Yet it pleased Yahweh to bruise him. He was caused him to suffer. When you make his soul an offering for sin, he will see his offspring. And this is another one, I ask Christians, how did he see his seed? How did he see his offspring? Well, they say, well, this is spiritual. No, it's not. This is related to him being cut out of the land of the living. As Jeremiah says and shows us, he was cut out from the land of the living. His wife was killed. Yet, you want to make it about your idol. So, in order for him to see his offspring, you have to say, well, this is spiritual. No, it's not. Yahweh wants you to have physical children. He will prolong his days. Boom. He will prolong his days. It's not about resurrection at all. It's about him not dying, but being afflicted. And we'll see that as you go through chapter 54. And Yahweh's pleasure will prosper in his hand. Didn't happen. Didn't happen. After the suffering of his soul, he will see the light and be satisfied. And my righteous servant will justify many by the knowledge of himself, and he will bear their iniquities. This is about Ezekiel, about Jeremiah. Therefore I will give him a portion with the great, and he will divide the plunder with the strong. When did that happen? Because he poured out his soul to death, and he was counted with the transgressors. Yet he bore the sins of many and made intercession for the transgressors. So let's go to the next chapter. Isaiah 54. Because, there are no chapter divisions in Isaiah's original scroll. Seeing barren, who you didn't give birth. Oh, the one that was cut off from the land of the living. Bring it out, singing, and cry aloud, you who didn't travail with child. For more of the children of the desolate than the children of the married, says Yahweh. Enlarge the place of your tent, and let them stretch out the curtains of your habitations. And don't spare, lengthen your cords and strengthen your stakes. For you will spread out on the right hand and on the left, and your offspring will possess the nations. Again, this suffering servant has offspring that are going to go out and possess the nations. This is not spiritual. And settle in desolate cities. Don't be afraid, for you will not be ashamed. Don't be confounded, for you will not be disappointed. For you will forget the shame of your youth, and the reproach of your widowhood you shall remember no more. For your Maker is your husband. Yahweh of armies is his name, and the Holy One of Israel is your Redeemer. Think about that. Yahweh tells you that the afflicted servant is his wife. Yeshua then would be the wife of Yahweh, the Father. And according to Paul, the church is the bride of Yeshua. None of this makes sense because you're replacing the truth with lies. He will be called the God of the whole earth. For Yahweh has called you as a wife forsaken. See, the forsaken wife is Israel, and aggrieved in spirit, even a wife of youth. This afflicted one is the wife of Yahweh. When she is cast off, says Yahweh your God, for a small moment I have forsaken you, Israel, but I will gather you with great mercies. In overflowing wrath I hid my face from you for a moment, but with everlasting love and kindness I will have mercy on you, says Yahweh your Redeemer. For this is like the waters of Noah to me. And this is interesting as well, because the idol says that in the last days it will be like the days of Noah. And every Christian interprets this negatively, but look at how Isaiah interprets this. For this is like the waters of Noah to me, for as I have sworn that the waters of Noah will no more go over the earth, so I have sworn to you that I will not be angry with you anymore, nor rebuke you. Isn't that interesting? For the mountains may depart, and the hills may be removed, but my loving kindness will not depart from you, and my covenant of peace will not be removed, says Yahweh, who has mercy on you. You afflicted, tossed with the storms, and not comforted, behold, I will set stones in your beautiful colors. And this is why it's also the city, because it doesn't make sense to put stones as a people, as the New Testament tries to do, misinterpreting everything spiritually and platonically. No, this is about rebuilding Jerusalem, rebuilding the tabernacle that fell. I will set your stones in beautiful colors. Lay your foundations with sapphires, and it will make you pinnacles of rubies, and your gates of sparkling jewels, and all your walls of precious stones. All your children will be taught by Yahweh, and your children's peace will be great. In righteousness you will be established. You will be far from oppression, for you will not be afraid, and far from terror, for it shall not come near you. Behold, there you may gather together, but not by me. Whoever gathers together against you will fail because of you. Behold, I have created the blacksmith who fans the coals into flame, and forges a weapon for his work, and I have created the destroyer to destroy. And no weapon that is formed against you will prevail. This is the heritage of Yahweh's servant, and their righteousness is of me, says Yahweh. You see very clearly, Isaiah 53 is not about the idol. And this is why context is so important. You can't just read one passage and make it about your pretext. But, the New Testament authors go further. They take a passage, misquote it, and then misapply it. Because this is not in Isaiah 53 about his life being taken from the earth. It's not there. And this is not the only time the New Testament authors do this, and every single one of them do it. One of the first ones that keyed me off was Romans 10:6-8 compared to Deuteronomy 30. Romans 10:6-8. Moreover, the righteousness grounded in trusting says, do not say in your heart, who will ascend to heaven, and that is to bring the Messiah down, or who will descend into Sheol, that is to bring the Messiah from the dead. And then what does it say? The word is married in your heart, in your mouth. That is the word about trust, which we proclaim, namely. So Paul says he's quoting from the Torah. But this is what the Torah actually says. It isn't in the sky, so that you need to ask, who will go up into the sky for us, bring it to us, make us hear it, so that we can obey it. Likewise, it isn't beyond the sea, so that you need to ask, who will cross the sea for us? And it's interesting, he turned sea into Sheol. There's another twisting of the context, because, verse 13 is not about going down to Sheol or coming up from it. Likewise, it isn't beyond the sea that you need to ask, who will cross the sea for us to bring it to us, to make us hear it, so that we can obey it? On the contrary, the word is very close to you, in your mouth, even in your heart. Therefore, you can do it. And he took something about action and made it about mental assent, about faith. But more so, if Paul is right, and this is about his idol, it's not a positive thing, because it's saying, who will go up into the sky for us, bring it to us, and make us hear it, so that we can obey it? And likewise, it isn't beyond the sea that you need to ask. See, it isn't in the sky, so we don't need to ask who's coming from the sky. It isn't beyond the sea, or as Paul says, Sheol. It isn't in Sheol that we need to ask who will go into Sheol for us to make us hear it, so that we can obey it. You see, you don't need the idol. That's what this is saying. You don't need him. And Paul tries to pervert this to be positively about his idol, saying you do need him. You need to have faith in him. But this is not what Deuteronomy 30 is saying. And you can say, well, I don't believe in Paul. The whole New Testament is like this. I mean, I could go through passage after passage and show how it perverts the context, it twists the Torah, it twists the prophets. There's no sound doctrine in the New Testament. None. Yahweh doesn't require human sacrifice, and he doesn't require blood drinking.